All right, magic makers. I try not to do too many I'm going to call it evergreen podcasts. But I feel like I feel like at this time of year, it's the perfect time to talk about, you know, as the year comes to a close. And so my motto is always resets, not resolutions. Because, I don't have the statistics, but I'm sure in the next several weeks you'll hear how resolutions go by the wayside. And my anecdotal information is that I taught at gyms for over 15 years, and I see it regularly. That first full week of January, people come in to the gym and they're like, "Yeah, let's get this party started," and they go hard. And then probably around the end of January, the first wave of people start to fall off. Then I see the next wave of people fall off. And then by I'd say by the, what's that? President's weekend. Yeah, President's weekend. By President's weekend, and definitely by the end of February, the resolutioners, they're gone. See ya, girl, bye. And there are a few who stick around. They're like, yeah, this feels good. And so I want you to start thinking about, is that you? Right? Do you get yourself like all fired up? You go like hard, you go balls to the wall. And then, it's just like, you just can't sustain it. And so here's where I want you to kind of just start to, I always will say this, we got to work with what being realistic. It is those like huge, big sprints to get this like commanding lead. It's what always keeps us from seeing the resolution to completion. So so if you're trying to think about doing this like major overhaul for 2021, 2021, oh my gosh, I went back like a couple years. Woo! You're trying to make it to 2023, my goodness, then you're in the right place. And so I want us to start thinking about, how do I do this with a strategy? Because I see so many people kind of like pull all of these things together and then they get disappointed that it's not working. So first, you got to ask yourself these hard questions, right? So it's like, I'm asking you to have what I call a CEO day. Like, sit down, and it's okay to slow down, right? It is okay to press the pause button. And I've done several podcasts about like us always in this like busy, 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 busy. Where's you trying to go? Where are you trying to go that we can't sit down and create a roadmap? I want you to think about, when you go on vacation, do you just like clicking, go to the latest, JetBlue website, and you just like, first airline, first flight out, I don't care where it's going, I'm going to get on it? Or are you sitting around, you're like, okay, I want to go to Jamaica, and where are we going to stay? And what are we going to do? And you're thinking about all the things, you do all the research, right? But when it comes to our health and fitness, we are like, what's that shiny thing that's in front of my face? And I'm going to hop on that. So first, like, sit down and just give yourself a good, I'm going to say 30 minutes to an hour. I know asking for an hour is like, I might as well ask you to walk out your door naked. Just give yourself the time so you can ask yourself these questions, and just so that we can go in and you're not feeling disappointed. You go in and you are creating these expectations of yourself that you're going to hit, you're going to meet, versus you tell yourself, I'm going to lose 2.2 pounds in 20 seconds. And if it doesn't happen, then I suck and I'm off to the next thing. All right. So why are you in need of this reset? Like, what is going on? And it goes back to my last podcast where it's like, I need to observe, like, what am I doing so that I can assess if I am on the right track? So I need to step back and say, what is it that I'm trying to achieve? What am I currently doing? What needs to change in order to get me to where I want to go? Create my action plan, and then repeat and repeat and repeat and repeat until I got what I want. And, what are the areas that are most important to you? Because maybe you're sitting here and you're looking at this like reset and you're like, my whole life, I just want to blow it up. And then, then you kind of have to say, all right, in pecking order what's most important to me. You know, in our life, if you think about it, we have family, we have work, we have money, we have health, we have spirituality, right? There's a lot of different veins we can go down. So we need to say, okay, here are the, let's say 5 things that I want to work on. Let's rank them, right? And not everything can be important. And, you know, if you've been listening to my podcast for a while, you know, I'm huge into one thing, right? This book called The One Thing, that is really what changed my life and stopped me from, like, you know, flitting around like a freaking butterfly. It was that I was able to say, okay, what is that one thing? If I got really good at this one thing, what is it's think of it like a domino, right? We've all seen those dominoes that, like, you lay them all out and it creates these like zigzag patterns, and you hit one and like the whole pattern starts to, like, you know, roll around. So think about to yourself, you know, if we're talking about, you know, our health, our work, money, family, self-care, mental health, like, where would I rank those? Like, and, you know, it can, you know, one of the ways I can ask you to rank them, it's like, start with like what feels easy, you know, and then we can add on, because many of us start with the hard stuff and then I don't have success. I want you to feel like a winner. And when I feel like a winner, guess what? I want to do more. So then, and also, like, when I start with the easy stuff, besides feeling a winner, I start to open my eyes to possibilities, right? When I start with the hard and I'm like, I got no ideas here. This is just like climbing Everest in a pair of pumps and a t-shirt. So here's where, if I start with something easy, and then I'm like, okay, look at this. I was able to do that. 1, I feel good. But 2, then I'm like, well, you know, I did this because, and you start to like be more expansive in your thinking versus this like rigid thinking of like, it has to be this way. You know, in order to, you know, if you think about, the best way I can describe it is driving to your house, right? There's probably a couple different routes to get to your house. You can go right or you can go left. And I know, you know, if I'm going to just talk about my house, I know if I go to the right, I can go that way, but there's a couple more lights versus when I go left, there's only stop signs. So you decide, you know, which way makes the most sense for you. Because if I'm trying to split my time, it's really easy to lose focus. It's also really hard for me to judge progress, right? Because I always hear people like, oh my God, I'm not making any progress at all. And I'm like, okay, well, what are you working on? Well, I'm trying to get in more water. I'm trying to up my steps. I'm trying to get more sleep. I'm trying to make sure I get to the gym. I'm trying to get more, and it's like blah, 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 where it's like, I'm trying to do all these things where it's like, get really good. And I challenge you that, you know, I always ask my clients to work on no more than minimum 1 to 3 things. And we all have to know what I call our season. You know, we all have these seasons that are busier than the other. And, you know, I have a client, she's a tax attorney. And so right now, things are okay. This is an okay season for her. But come January through May, she's crazy trained. So when she's trying to get something done, like right now is when she's like, I'm going to get stuff done. And then when I know I'm crazy, I'm not going to try to do all the things. I'm going to focus in on one thing, because that's all I can focus on, because I'm trying to keep my head above water with everybody trying to get the darn taxes done. Right. So that's where we got to start to like really kind of look at our lives and realize like, not every day I can come wearing a freaking cape. Then take a look at, are my goals the same? You know, am I trying to achieve the same thing? Have they shifted? Do they need to shift? You know, ask myself those questions, because right now I always tell people that we have to go with the do my goals feel realistic, right? And so, and I've talked about this ad nauseum in another podcast, and I will link up the show notes, but I call it my reps, right? So with my reps, it's like, okay, are my goals realistic? And when they're realistic, that means I am super clear about where it is that I'm trying to go. And I am clear on the choices, at least to start, that I need to make in order to get there. Because when my goals aren't realistic, that's when it gets challenging. Because if I tell myself I'm going to lose, all right, my biggest challenge is when every diet on the planet says lose 1 to 2 pounds a week. That's not realistic. Sorry, not sorry. It is not realistic for many of you, because many of you listening to me right now, you have dieted since you were 15. And your body's like, girl, I know exactly where you're going. I know what you're trying to do, and I ain't going to give it to you. And so for all of us trying to get this 1 to 2 pounds, and then we tell ourselves, if I just cut back on my calories, if I just, lived off rice cakes and Tic Tacs, I would be fabulous. For how long? Right. So here is where we sit down and we say to ourselves, is my goals realistic? Am I clear about where it is that I want to go? And do I have an initial set of choices? And when I say choices, I'm talking about, what does your food look like? Your nutrition, what does your food look like? What does your workout look like? Are you sleeping? Are you running around like a freaking stress ball? So that way that we can kind of get our heads on right now. Is it a good time of year for you? Now, this isn't for me to say like, take it off. This is like, how much can I really take on right now? And if you say one thing, that doesn't make you less of a badass. That actually makes you the biggest badass on the planet, because you're owning where you are. You are being realistic. You're like, you know what? Life right now is a little crazy. And so instead of saying, I'm going to pause, you're like, I'm just going to slow it down a bit, right? Instead of running around with the chicken with my head cut off, I'm going to be like, you know what? I'm going to be a little slower and get what I want. And then that leads you to being excited, because if I am not excited about what I'm doing, then I'm done, right? I need to be excited because I need to connect. This right here is my why. So many people say, oh, I'm going to be motivated. Motivation is never going to ring your doorbell. Your why is your motivation. And so the more I could say, I live in New England, and so we're here in the wintertime. And I got to tell you, there's going to be plenty of days that it's going to be 2 degrees outside or minus 20 degrees outside, snow. And I'm going to be like, girl, do I really want to shovel out my car to shovel it back in? And then I have to ask myself, and I'm going to like lay in my bed and questioning my life choices. And I'm going to say, okay, is this what I want to do? Do I want to lay here in bed? Is this getting me closer to my goal? To wearing anything I want in my closet? To not ever worrying about, will these pants button? Being able to wear anything I want other than like my Lulus? And usually the question I give myself is yes. It's worth it for me to get my booty out of bed. And I get my booty out of bed. So we need to have those kind of conversations with ourselves in your head, so that this is where you get your motivation, right? It's connecting to, why do I want this goal? It could be, your goal could be, I want to play with my kids, and not be like, I'll catch up with you, right? You have to be able to figure out what it is that you're looking for. And here is where, when I'm excited, I get creative, right? Where I'm not like in this like vapor lock shoot of like, this is how it has to be. So I got to be excited. And then I have to have a plan. And so many of us go wing it. And I swear, winging it, I am a recovering winger, but you have to have a plan, because when you wing it, that's when like, oh gosh, the day got away from me. Work this, and life, and all the uhs happen to you. Where if I have a plan, right? I always talk about having an if then thinking, and this comes from psychology. So it's if then. If my boss hands me work at 5 p.m. and I was planning to go to the gym at 6 p.m., then I'm going to go to the gym on Saturday, right? That's where it's in the back of my mind. But I always tell people, there's 2 ways to make a plan. I can, sit down and make a plan for the week. Or if that feels too overwhelming, I can sit down the day before and make a plan for the next day. And, my plan is, and at first, the first few times you do it, it's going to feel a little, you're not going to be like, woo, I'm making a plan. But it will get easier. It will get faster, and it doesn't have to be this fancy thing. I sit down and my plan is something like this. I sit down and I write down the days of the week, right? So I write down the days of the week. And if you're watching this on the video, I write down the days of the week, right? Then I sit down and I say, okay, what does my life look like? Am I traveling? Do I have any early morning meetings? Because I work out in the morning. Do I have any more early morning meetings? And then I say, okay, I know the days that I have stuff that I just can't do anything. So I know this week I have a dentist appointment in the morning. So I can't work out in the morning. So on Thursday. So I'm like, okay, all right. I know Thursday is, and it's typically a workout day for me. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to shift my workout because Thursday is a dentist appointment. So I know I'm going to work out on Sunday. So I'm like, all right, what am I going to do? Am I doing cardio? Am I lifting? Am I just going for a walk? So I put that down. On Sunday, I'm going to lift. Monday, I'm going to lift. Tuesday, I'm going to go for a walk. If the weather dependent, if the weather doesn't hit my cold weather threshold, then I'm going to ride for 15 minutes on my Peloton. Wednesday, I'm going to lift. Thursday is my dentist appointment, so that's a rest day. I typically have a rest day on Friday, and then I'm going to lift again on Sunday. So there, it's I'm going to show you. It's not pretty, but that's how I do my workout schedule, right? I just like look at what's going on in my calendar, and then I map here. Same thing for food. Now, I know for some people get very vapor locked. Like if I say this is what I'm going to have for food, and then if someone kind of like spontaneity happens, then I get a little like rattled. With my food, I will know what I'm having for dinner. Like I keep that pretty. I know dinner is I make fresh every single day. My lunch, I always know that I'm having a big ass salad with chicken or some type of protein on it. And I know that I cook that literally Monday morning. I am cooking my chicken. It's blocked out in my calendar, and I'm cooking my chicken on Monday morning. I go to the grocery store every Friday. That's part of the schedule. That's part of the plan. And if I'm unable to go to the grocery store on Friday, I'm like, when else can I go to the grocery store? Or can I get Instacart or whatever your local delivery service to deliver me my groceries? And so that way, like, that's my then. And every Sunday I sit down and I write out, what am I going to have for dinner? Right. And it's like, actually I do this on Thursday because I go to the grocery store on Friday, and I sit down and I go through my fridge. I'm like, what do I got? What's in the freezer? And then I'm like, what am I going to make with it? And keep it really simple. I am not Martha Stewart. I am not making these elaborate gourmet dinners. It's typically some source of protein, and it's typically some type of vegetable or some type of starch is what I'll have. So it's like, I'll have like salmon and green beans and maybe some roasted sweet potato. Like that's dinner, right? So I keep it really simple. I keep my lunch really simple. If you love cooking, rock on with your bad self. God love you. And if you want to come and be my personal chef, call me. Because that is like my fantasy, is to have a personal chef like Oprah. I think Oprah even has people do her hair. I need that too. Anywho, I have to be excited I have to make a plan, right? And I also have to have the courage for the plan to might look different. So many of us, we've been dieting for a long time. We're pretty freaking good at it. But some of us need to expand our horizons because, and like, again, going back to asking the question, this is what I want. This is what I'm doing. Is it getting me to where I want to go? I have to observe that. And if it's not getting me to where I want to go, something has to change. And I beg of you to only change one thing, because when I change like too many variables, I don't know which one worked. So change one thing, right? I see it. I have a lot of clients who are fearful, of change. Like they've been doing this for so long. They're control freaks. They're type A plus plus with a side of A, and they want everything to be neatly lined up. But sometimes we have to just do a little bit of experiment. So it could, and guess what? With an experiment, you can always go back to what you were doing. Like, and you have permission to go back, but also give yourself permission to maybe it looks just a little different than what you're doing right now, and be okay with it. It's a 30-day experiment. It's a 30-day experiment, and I'm okay. Right. And I was that person. So I know from firsthand what it's like to be like, ooh, right. It's kind of like, like you're this bird that's been in a cage, and then you finally, like, the doors open and you're like, do I leave the cage? Yes, you can leave the cage and give yourself 30 days. And if the outside world sucks, get back in the cage. Lastly, sustainability. That's where I always am trying to get my clients to be in that sustainable place so that we have consistency, right? That's the holy grail. What can I do consistently? Because we live in these extremes, right? It's either I'm eating everything in sight and I'm being bad, or I'm restricting and I'm being good. Right? There's no middle ground, or the middle ground is like, it's a one hot second. So it's like, how do we, if going off the rails is a 10, and, restricting every little morsel that goes in your mouth is a 1, how do we stay within the 5 to 7? That's the sustainability zone. That's where I want my clients to live and thrive, in that 5 to 7, where it's like, maybe I'm going on vacation, wedding, so forth, and I scale it back to a 5 so that I can, I scale it back to a 5, and then I can move it out to a 7. But I'm ebbing and flowing between this 5 and the 7. So it's not this full on, like, eat my face off. And it's not this full on, I can only have carrots and water, right? We're finding our way between that 5 and the 7. And that's where the fit girl magic comes from, right? That's where I know I have great, strong habits that I can always come back to, because I have great routines. I have the consistency, and now I have the long lasting results, right? It's like the rinse and repeat. So that's what we have. Like, what is our plan, right? And it doesn't have to be this complex. And if you're someone who's struggling, like, reach out to me and be like, girl, how do I make a plan? Because I can barely, like, put my head on straight, let alone find a plan. And this is where it's the rinse and repeat. So that's like, I'm doing it over and over and over again. So when life throws me a curveball, I'm like, okay, I can dip and dive, like dodgeball. Like, I can dip and dive. If I can dive a wrench, I can manage a diet. All right. So take the time to review your plan so that you're not disappointed and you're not frustrated. Because what stops many of us is that we set the bar so bleeping high, and then we get disappointed because I couldn't jump over this, 4 million, story hole. I want you to start thinking to yourself, how do I lower the bar? And it's not that you're lowering your standards. You're just saying to yourself, I'm going to start to work my way up the ladder, right? Like, think about a child. A child doesn't come out the womb sprinting. It's a blob, right? It could barely hold its head up, but eventually a kid could hold his head up. Eventually it starts to, like, move around a little bit more. Eventually it rolls over. Eventually it tries to pull itself up. Eventually it gives you that drunken sailor walk. And eventually it's like, I think I got this. And one foot goes in front of the other. Eventually it gets faster. They get more stable. And then next thing you know, you're chasing them all over the damn place. Right. So that's what I want us to get to, that, like, that toddler mentality or pre-toddler mentality, because no one ever would say to their child, you suck because you can't roll over at 2 months. Okay, let me just be clear. I have no children, so I don't know if they roll over at 2 months or not. So if rolling over at 2 months is like a thing, then it's a thing. But you're picking up what I'm putting down. So I want you to all just kind of take a big giant step back and say, where is it that I want to go? Observe where you are assess what needs to change in order to get you to where you want to go, and create that experiment, right? And that's where we create a reset versus a resolution, because a resolution is like, this is the year that I'm going to, and then this is the year that you're like, well, that was a good year, but 2024, 2025, boom, I'm going to crush it. I'm going to be the rock star, right? So if this sounds of interest to you and you're like, yeah, this makes so much sense, do me a favor, hit me up, because I want to make sure that I'm providing you with the information that is going to help you move the needle, move the ball, whatever you want to call it, forward. All right, ladies, stay fabulous, and I will talk to you next week.